the European Commission has confirmed it will allow EU industries to continue emitting planet-warming CO2 gases well into the 2040s. This as part of an overhaul of the bloc's emissions trading system. For the first time, starting in 2036, the Commission will give industry the option of buying carbon credits from outside the EU to offset their emissions. That means the carbon price could be lowered and give industries more options to pollute if EU carbon allowances run out. Well, let's first hear from the EU Climate Commissioner.
Today's proposal on the ETS brings together three key goals: sustained, truly ambitious climate action, much more competitiveness, and a huge boost for our independence. We are adopting a more business-friendly and, may I say so, savvy approach, which recognizes those who have invested in the clean transition.
Well, let's get more on that now. We have two guests joining us tonight, European MEP Michael Bloss from the Greens and European Free Alliance, and Wijnand Stoefs from the non-profit research organisation Carbon Market Watch. Great to have you with us both on the programme tonight. Wijnand, we'll start with you. What does this decision mean now for the EU's 2040 climate goals? Because this is, without a doubt, a significant watering down of the bloc's climate emissions.
It throws a spanner in reaching our 2040 targets. That's how simple it is. We have a 2040 target, we have a 2050 target, and we have made it a lot more difficult to reach those. The Commission has chosen to weaken our climate policies at the moment that they should be doubling down. How are we going to solve this? I don't know, but it's looking very bleak right now.
Michael, we're going to cross to you now. Now, the rationale behind this decision, help us understand this, because in Europe, we've obviously been gripped by extreme heat. We've seen 3 heat waves in France alone this summer. And yet the EU Commission has still chosen to weaken the bloc's most powerful tool for cutting emissions.
I'm not the spokesperson of the European Commission, and we Greens have been criticizing this a lot, exactly because of what you said. We are seeing around or more than 10,000 people who have died during the heat waves. Europe is the continent of all that is struck hardest by the climate crisis. And yet we are cutting down on our climate protection measures. So that's bad. That's an addition of 1.4 gigatons, so gigantic more CO2 pollution. That's around the amount of Germany, Italy, and France combined in 1 year that is now additionally emitted to the atmosphere.
Now, Wijnand, what kind of a signal does this send to those who have been investing in the green transition, but also to the big polluters?
A very mixed signal. I think if I were a big polluter in Europe yesterday, I would have been very, very happy to see this. I will have to pay less for my pollution. There will be less pressure on me. In essence, I can continue business as usual for another 10, 15 years. However, if I was an investor in green technologies, and there are many of those in Europe, and there are many waiting in the line to get that financial decision over the finish line and start investing in clean production, if I were one of those, I would be very depressed, because right now the Commission is sending a signal: if you're a polluter, keep on polluting, and when things get difficult, if you lobby us, we will cave in. So I'm hoping that the clean energy of this world, and there are some very big companies in France that have been very outspoken for the ETS, I hope that they rally the troops and that they start calling their prime minister, their president, their minister, their MEPs, such as Michael Bloss, to put some pressure on this process and really start shifting that tanker in the right direction.
And Wijnand, just continuing on your last point about the lobbying, you've argued previously that the EU's policymaking process is increasingly being influenced by business lobbies, because it's hard to downplay the consequences of this, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And we can see that lobbying happening day in, day night. In this specific case, it's been the chemical industry and the petrochemical industry and their European association, CEFIC, but also those who are producing steel based on coke, on coal. ArcelorMittal being a big company in France, they have been heavily lobbying against them. They've been extremely visible. They've been extremely problematic in what they're saying. I think they're lying to the public. I think they're lying to policymakers, but they get away with it. And why do they get away with it? Because there's a fear of this right-wing switch, this right-wing right-wing shift in the public debate. The European Parliament is a bit more right-wing than it used to be. The Council has a few members that are far-right. And there's this fear that we can't upset the far-right, and we have to kind of look for the middle ground. But the climate does not care about the middle ground. The climate does not care about political realities. The laws of physics, they keep on going. Doesn't matter if our European Parliament is left or right. And so those lobbies have been very successful. They have fear-mongered the hell out of this. They have kept on saying, we're going to lose jobs, we're going to lose production. That production, those jobs were already being lost before the emission trading system started working. The ETS and the carbon price have no effect whatsoever right now on jobs in Europe. However, they could have an effect on increasing jobs in the clean tech sector. And that is, I think, where politicians should be looking. Do not continue business as usual, put a price on the pollution, and make sure that those clean tech of the future, that they get the support they need.
And Wijnand, just a quick question to you before we cross back to Michael. When we talk about lobbying, is it just the lobbying by the industries that we're talking about here, or are there other actors at play that are influencing these decisions on the EU level?
There are many actors, and of course, I'm a lobbyist myself. I lobby for the climate, not against it. But there are many lobbyists, and we can see that there's been American groups that have tried to bring kind of the agenda of the Trump administration to Brussels. We've seen many of those, but we've also seen many political backers in Europe of those polluters. There are many governments, there are many MEPs who are very happy to go along with that message of the climate change isn't real, it's not really a threat, or we can't do anything about it, or look to China, Europe can't do anything. All those kind of statements that always mean denial or delay climate action. And those lobbyists are all over in Brussels. I can tell you that I have a team of 5 working on ETS. Well, most associations have a team of 20 working on ETS. So they outnumber us, they outgun us, they have far more money, and they get the impact they need. And I think it's up to politicians to make the choice. Do you stick with a future that's green, or do you continue listening to those polluters? So I would hope that the influence of those lobbyists gets curtailed in the near future.
Michael, so the EU gives industries some CO2 permits for free to help them compete with foreign rivals. Now, the Commission proposal would give industries even more free permits for longer, but with new conditions attached. And all this in the name of competitiveness.
That's correct. What we see is we have a crisis in many parts of industry. But what needs to be understood is that this is not a crisis because of the emission trading system or because of CO2 price. This is a crisis because Europe's industry is too dependent on very expensive imports of fossil gas and fossil oil. And we are just not competitive on this realm. So the ETS system is actually creating an incentive structure that leads industries to invest into going away from this dependency and into clean energy. Now, if you cut down on the system, or if you basically say you don't have to pay because you get everything for free, then there's basically shooting yourself in the foot, because you're just continuing with the problems that have brought you into this situation. So therefore, I would also say there is a right-wing majority in the European Parliament, but there's also a majority in the middle. And what is completely clear is that there will be no right-wing majority voting on an ETS system, because the right-wing will never vote in favor. So there needs to be a consensus, some kind of compromise in the middle. And the progressive side, so us, the Greens, but also socialists and liberals, we have already said we want to continue with the emission trading system as it is, at least until 2036, so that those who have invested, those who already made the right choice, that their business models will not be destroyed. So this will be difficult and hard debates and conversations we will have in the European Parliament on the law.
Michael, you mentioned the EU's dependency on fossil fuels and the intention that's there on some level towards the pivot towards clean green energy. Now, the EU Commission says it will, in parallel, offer more financial support to invest in clean technologies in Europe. But this strikes me as a bit of a band-aid solution, like a carrot and stick situation, if you will.
Yeah, well, basically the Commission has said that those certificates, so that the industry gets for free now, 20% of those certificates they can only get if you're investing into a European plant. And 20%, that's much too little. It should be 100% that you only get money if you're investing actually into European plants. Because what has happened in the past is that some industries made really a fortune, billions of euros, and they invested that exact money into building, for instance, chemical plants in China, creating their own competition, and now switching production to China. So this must not happen with kind of basically European public money. So all of this money should be conditional on really investing into Europe. And then on the other hand, it's true that actually those who have already invested, Heidelberg Materials, Saarstahl, a lot of companies also wrote to me letters, wrote to the whole commission that said, please keep everything as is. You're destroying our business model if you weaken the system. They don't have anything from this, so they are now the ones being punished. And that's really bad policy making.
And Michael, there's been a lot of internal division over the details of this overhaul. Does that mean it's likely to spark a clash in Parliament, and which countries are then behind this decision?
Well, actually, it's interesting that we have seen letters from member states like Spain, but also like Nordic countries, the Netherlands. Also, Germany has a very progressive position, also France, that basically says we want to keep the system as it is until at least 2035. Italy, Poland, the Easterners, they are not so supportive, but I think there is actually more support of having really an ambitious ETS than what the Commission has been proposing yesterday. So I guess what we will try to do in the European Parliament is actually to increase the ambition of what has been presented. The timeline is very ambitious as well. We should be done already in Q1 in next year. Not sure this will happen, but this will be now very intense debates after the summer break. I think, we will have long nights of negotiating in the European Parliament in autumn.
Yeah, long nights of negotiations coming up. Wijnand, now Brussels has already weakened environmental rules for cars and farmers after industry concerns. There are obviously many who say the EU is all talk when it comes to the green push, and they're just making empty promises. Why do you feel like there's this lack of urgency, if you will, on an EU level when it comes to climate change?
I wish I could give you an answer to that. I wish I could look into the heads and the minds of the policymakers that are taking these decisions. I think it's very ironic in a month that we are sweltering in heat, we are sweltering in forest fires. You're broadcasting from Paris. You've had forest fires close to you this week. It is impossible to comprehend why. I think it is because they are listening to those who are saying, we cannot go further, don't put a price on us, let us continue our pollution. And it's ironic, and I mentioned ArcelorMittal before, they have invested far more in maintaining the operation of their coal-based assets, of their coal-based factories, than they have invested in green steel. And so they have right now a vested interest to continue lobbying against the system. They will continue to pollute, and as long as they are allowed to pollute, they will continue to put their profits into lobbying against the system. And Michael was talking before about the profits. There are billions of windfall profits that are being made in the system. And where do those go? Michael mentioned that they go to the factories in China, but we've also seen that top 3 petrochemical companies in Europe, they have spent 95 billion on share buybacks the last 3 years. So these are companies that are saying they cannot pay the carbon price. It's not competitive. They will have to close their factories, and at the same time, they send 95 billion euros to their shareholders. These are the companies that are lobbying against this, and it's a shame. And I call on those people to maybe think what kind of world they're leaving to their kids and my kids and the kids of my kids. I for shame to them.
Yeah. All right. We're going to have to leave it there. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you so much. It's great to have your input. It's Michael Bloss, the European MEP from the Greens and European Free Alliance, and Wijnand Stoefs from the research organization Carbon Market Watch. Thank you so much for your time today.